Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Start things off. Okay, so I'm Quinn Pallardy, and I'm working with Dr. Svoma on downscaling temperature data for the Midwestern United States. So what I'm going to talk about today, mostly down to three things. I'm going to talk about a bit of background information about downscaling, then some information about the downscale data that will be available, as well as how to access that data. So start off some background information. Downscaling is a process that increases the resolution of data. So the two main types of downscaling used in climate science today are statistical downscaling and dynamical downscaling. The type of downscaling we're going to use is statistical downscaling. And statistical downscaling has several advantages and disadvantages relative to dynamical downscaling. The biggest advantage is that it's computationally inexpensive. And because of this, it can provide very high resolution data, which you just can't get in a reasonable time frame with dynamical downscaling. It also has some limitations. The output from statistical downscaling is not necessarily physically consistent in time and space, and it relies on the assumption of stationarity of statistical relationships, which may not completely hold for the future. What statistical downscaling does is it uses relationships between large-scale predictors and final-scale predictands to increase the resolution of model data. There are several types of statistical downscaling. For this project, we use multiple linear regression to downscale the NARCAP models, and I'll talk about the NARCAP models later. So for multiple linear regression, the predictor variables we use make up of 6 surface variables and 4 upper air variables. For 5 of these 6 surface variables, there are 12 Z variables, which is essentially the morning in the Midwest, as well as 1 mean daily surface temperature variable. The predictands, this is essentially what we're predicting, are daily maximum and minimum temperatures. The domain size is the spatial region defining what data is inputted into the prediction model. Principal components analysis is used to distill the data found in the domain region into 3 principal components that explain the maximum amount of variance. This is done for each predictor variable. The image on the right shows the domain used for a model cell in western Iowa. The domain size here is roughly 1,300 kilometers in diameter, corresponding to about 12 degrees of latitude. For this project, we downscale NARCAP models. NARCAP is the North American Regional Climate Change Assessment Program, and it partly consists of model simulations with inset boundary conditions, as well as nested regional climate models within global climate models. The NARCAP models use the A2 emission scenarios from the Special Report on Emission Scenarios. This scenario is a relatively high emission scenario, but not the highest in those considered. The model time periods in the NARCAP program are the current period, also called the historical periods in some areas, and the future period. The current period is 1970 to 2000. The future is 2040 to 2070. So 8 RCM GCM model pairs are downscaled in total, and they're listed here. There are 4 different global climate models and 4 different regional climate models. For each global climate model, 2 regional climate models are downscaled, and for each regional climate model, 2 global climate models are downscaled. Specific information about each model pair can be found at this website, found at the bottom here. So for the next few slides, I'm going to talk about model spatial resolution. Global climate model resolution is generally higher than 100 kilometers, or about 1 degree of latitude. Regional climate model resolution is generally 50 kilometers or lower, or about 0.5 degrees of latitude. The NARCAP models are generally right around here at 50 kilometers in resolution. So what we're downscaling to is the resolution of the PRISM dataset, which is the parameter elevation regressions on independent slopes model. This is about 4 kilometers in resolution, or 0.04 degrees in latitude. What it's useful for is when information is required at a very localized scale, and this is particularly relevant in locations where there's rapid change in elevation, land use, or the presence of nearby water. This image here shows shows the entire model field for the Canadian Regional Climate Model, which is one of the NARCAT models. You can see that the model expands as the further north you get, and that is due to the decreasing distance between meridians the further north you get. So to keep the grid size relatively constant, the meridional distance has to increase. The image on the left is a close-up of the model grid for the CRCM in the Chicago area. The image on the right contains all the prism cell locations for roughly the same region. There are about 140 prism cells per model cell. As you can see, there's gaps in data over the Great Lakes for the prism cells, so there will be no downscale data there. The variables that will be available for downloading soon are daily maximum temperature in degrees Celsius and daily minimum temperature in degrees Celsius. Daily precipitation is work in progress, and the data will be available later this year. The spatial coverage of what will be available covers most of the Midwestern US, and this image shows the rough area covered. Notice that there is some interpolation going on over the Great Lakes where there will be no downscale data. So this is 140,449 total points, and available, there will be two types of files available. The first will be the NPY file format, which will contain, each of these files will contain data for all 140,449 points. It's a file format associated with the NumPy Python package. You can also use it with other coding languages, but it requires software to adapt it to those coding languages. Also available will be text files, which contain data, smaller amounts of data, and this is for about 1 degree by 1 degree, latitude by longitude, equivalent to 25 by 25 prism cells, or 625 individual points. You can see what the total regional coverage of one text file is in this image on the right, and it's due to the decreasing distance between meridians as the further north you get. You can see that the latitude distance is greater than the longitude distance for the 1 by 1 degree latitude longitude here. So the time periods of data available are the current time period and the future time period, which is, the current time period is January 1st, 1968 to December 31st, 1998. The future time period, January 1st, 2038 to December 31st, 2068. There are two exceptions. For the MM5 CCSM model pair, the current time period ends 1 year before, on December 31st, 1997, and for the RCM CGM3 model pair, the future time period ends 1 year short. This is due to missing data for 1998 and for 2068, respectively, for these two model pairs. This means that the total number of days of data available for the standard 31-year period is 11,323 and 10,958 for the shortened periods. There will be two sets of downscaled data available. One where the raw model values are used as input for the downscaling program, and one where the model values have been adjusted using a bias correction algorithm. So what the bias correction algorithm does is it uses quantile mapping to match the cumulative distribution function for the model variables in the current period runs to those in inset pre-analysis. This same correction is applied to the future period runs. This is a graphic showing what exactly it does. So the blue line here is a portion of the cumulative distribution function for the current time period with no adjustment. The red line is the same cumulative distribution function except for the future period. The dotted blue line here would be the INSEP cumulative distribution function. What the bias correction does is it shifts this blue line to match this dotted blue line. And the same thing happens, or the same correction is applied to the red line here, or the future period, to get the dotted red line, which is the bias corrected future period. So now I'm going to talk about how the model data is obtained. And the file paths describe how the data is structured in directories. For text files, the template is listed here in this first point. It goes regional climate model, global climate model, the indicator that or the bias adjustment indicator, then the file type, then downscaled variable, and then the time period. And here's an example of how it's going to appear. So the bias adjustment indicator is either going to be bias A or in bias A to indicate whether bias adjustment has been performed on the model. The file type is going to be either text or MPY. And important to note that the MPY files will not be split into separate directories for variable and time period like the text files are. The downscaled variable is either max T or min T, corresponding to the maximum daily temperature or the minimum daily temperature. And the time period will be either C or F, referring to the current time period or the future time period. For file names, okay, the file names will contain information about what is contained within the file. So the template is here, and it first is latitude, longitude, then the bias adjustment marker, then the model code, and then the variable. And this is an example. The latitude and longitude are the coordinates for the northwestern corner of all points within the text file. And the bias adjustment marker is either going to be B or N to indicate whether the model is bias adjusted or not adjusted for bias. The model code is 3 characters. The first will be the RPM representing the RPM, the second the GCM, and the third will be the time period that's downscaled. And the information describing this code will be available in the README file, which is also going to be available with the downscaled data. Each line in the file is going to contain first a latitude and longitude pair for the prism point that's been downscaled as well. Then it's going to be followed by a time series of the data for the variable specified in the file name. This is going to be the case for both file types. Latitude and longitude pairs will be arranged in ascending order from lowest to highest, primarily sorted by latitude and then by longitude. They're on a regular grid, meaning each consecutive point is separated by an equal number of degrees of latitude and longitude. So to find the data you're looking for, what you need to do is locate the text file with coordinates containing the nearest latitude-longitude pair to the north and west of a desired latitude and longitude value. And I'm going to describe an example here. Suppose you want to find downscaled NARCAP model data in the vicinity of Columbia, Missouri at about 39 degrees north and 92 degrees west. This is what the all the text files look like on my computer. And what you're going to need to do is find the, so here, up here in the upper left corner is the desired latitude, longitude coordinate, 39 north, 92 west. So we're going to look for the point, or the point nearest to the north, which is going to be, we have 38 and 39.27. So we're going to look for all points with the 39.27 latitude value. And then look for longitude value, which is 92.3 west. And we want the one just west of this. This is going to end up being the negative 92.4375 file, or yeah. And so this is going to be our file that can contain points that are nearest to this location. You may need additional files surrounding this point if you want to get, if your desired point is near the edge of the text file domain. Also available for each data file are going to be metadata files in XML format. And portions of these XML files are going to remain constant, and other portions will vary depending on which file is being described. They'll use identical file pathing and naming conventions as the text and MPY data files. This is a portion of one of these XML files, and this is what it appears like when it's loaded into a internet browser. So some of these lines will remain constant, but lines like publication date and the title will vary depending on which file is being described. And finally, I'm going to show a few preliminary results. These are not finalized, but just show what the downscaled data can look like when it's visualized. On the left here is downscaled daily min temperature for the CRCM model, and this is yearly average. On the right, or the one on the left is for current, and the one on the right is for future. This image is the difference between these two images in this last slide. From this image, you can see there's a general trend toward increasing temperature change in the northern portion, or as the further north you get, as well as increasing temperature change near the Great Lakes. This is a close-up of the St. Louis area of these same images, and this was done for Andrew Hurley of the community team, who wanted to look into microclimates of the St. Louis area. Keep in mind, these are preliminary images, so he was particularly interested in the urban heat island effect, which is visible pretty clearly here. So I think that just about wraps it up. Are there any questions?
For those images you were just showing, are they not bias corrected, since you're saying the preliminary? So does that mean that the bias
I think these are bias corrected.
Okay.
These did use the bias corrected data.
Quinn, this is Pat Market. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
So quick question. We're looking at temperature so far, and I do remember some of the things that had originally been proposed way back when, but not everybody might be familiar with that. So what other products, in terms of like precipitation, et cetera, what other things are you anticipating doing as a part of this? We've seen temperature so far. What else is out there?
We'll have daily precipitation. That's the other big one. There's also various things like freezing degree days and, or I guess growing season length that can be generated from the temperature data. But precipitation and temperature were the two big areas, downscaling areas. Do we have any other questions, or?
I had one pertaining to the format of the output files. You said that like the larger files are all in the NPY. Is there a particular reason why they're being saved in that NumPy format, or was there any more universal format that you could get them into? I was just curious.
It was the easiest way to save very large data files, because each of these data files is about 6 gigabytes, and load them, save them and load them. It was the simplest way. There is probably other ways to do it.
Okay.
Quinn, this is Pat again, just as a follow-up onto Justin's question, and I may have missed this, you may have said it. There is a corresponding text file for every NumPy file?
That is correct. There's it's not, the text files are split into smaller versions. So, but all the points are there.
Okay, all right. This was pretty much all I had anticipated for today. So thank you, Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the only thing, we had the all hands meeting last week, or the statewide, I guess it's the same thing. The only thing I would echo, I know they had originally given us a deadline of March 1, but I'm sure if you still have things to put into Drupal, they would be happy to have them. And having said that, that's really all that I had anticipated for today, unless there are other questions. Okay, Quinn, I think you hold the record for brevity, which that's not a bad thing. Very succinct and very useful. All right. Well, Emily, unless you have something else, I think we're done.